Surrounded by silence, Dasha stood in the kitchen and just washed the kettle. The hands moved mechanically, as if by themselves, without waiting for any conscious orders. She rubbed it with all her might, not noticing at all how quickly time was passing. That it had already been almost 10 minutes, and the kettle was still in her hands, and she was rubbing it. The metal gradually begins to shine under the pressure of her efforts, but Dasha's thoughts are occupied with something else entirely. She asks the same question over and over again. Well, when will it all end? What can she do to finally be free? Thoughts were obsessively spinning in my head, a painfully familiar depressing fatigue was rolling in like a snowball. There is not the slightest glimmer in the future. Although deep down, she still hoped for at least a small ray of light. But the belief that happiness could be found in this marriage had long since left her. Gray, unremarkable everyday life, diluted with the same gray scandals and squabbles, exhausted her to the limit. How to live on? Everything was so disgusting that sometimes I wanted to leave the house and just get out of desperation. But even that won't bring relief. Breaking this vicious circle now seems absolutely impossible. Being together is getting harder and harder every day. What is the only way out? Just endure and hope for a miracle. But patience is not unlimited either. And how did everything begin carefree and romantic? Oh, what sirens Edward performed under her window. He came every evening when the sun was already setting and silence enveloped the streets of the city to sing for her. His voice carried through the quiet alleys, forcing passers-by to stop and listen. And Dasha, holding her breath, opened the window of her room and listened to this magic. How beautifully he sang the songs that he himself wrote for her sake alone, in every note, in every word, his love and devotion sounded. Every morning she found fresh flowers at her door, always different and beautiful. It was as if Edward wanted to show the whole world through these bouquets. He guessed for a long time which flowers she would like the most, until one day he gave her a bouquet of orchids. Dasha held her gaze on these delicate flowers, and her eyes shone. He realized that he had found the perfect flowers for her. Since then, he has given her only orchids, a symbol of their unique and tender love. The girl then thought that it would always be like this. She believed that their happiness would know no bounds. Well, maybe without daily orchids, but always with your loved one. She imagined their future exclusively in bright colors, spending all their free time together next to him every day, sharing joys and sorrows, supporting each other in everything. Isn't this a real woman's happiness, to live in a world filled with love, where every moment is the complete harmony of two loving hearts? She immediately agreed to his marriage proposal. I've been waiting for this for so long. At the wedding, Dasha was so happy that she literally glowed from the inside. It was visible to everyone around. Happy Edward only asked his beautiful bride again, "Are you really mine now? Forever?" And she smiled happily and nodded her head affirmatively, and tenderly only answered, "Until death do us part." After the wedding, the couple immediately began to live separately from their parents. Edic's parents bought him an apartment 3 years ago and even furnished it with modern furniture. The housing turned out to be also not far from the office, where Daria worked as a designer for the 3rd year. Her best friend from the institute, pretty Vera, also worked there. However, Vera did not work here for very long. She got married and moved to her husband in a neighboring city. Vera, of course, was also present at Dasha's wedding. When she gave birth to her daughter, Dasha named her Dasha in honor of her beloved friend. Then their paths parted, but they continued to communicate, often called up and shared details from each other's lives. Dasha liked her husband's apartment very much. It's so big, spacious and cozy. She already imagined how cleverly she would arrange a family nest, buy beautiful curtains, pick up cute ottomans and fill the kitchen set with expensive dishes. The only thing she disagreed with in her heart was that one of the two rooms was completely packed with musical instruments, but since Edouard was a musician, a free artist, so to speak, as he called himself, and at the same time the leader of the group, which was always in search of its repertoire and audience, she had to put up with this. There were simply no other options. There was no money from the band's performances. They only spent money on transporting equipment and studio rehearsals. Dasha also didn't really like the fact that her husband continued to spend most of his time with his bandmates. It was the norm for them to rehearse until nightfall, and then go to some pub and sit there until morning. It seemed that nothing had changed in Eddie's life, unless there is a woman in the apartment who will always feed, clean and wash deliciously. Such a free maid with a stamp in her passport. At the same time, Edouard earned irregular part-time jobs, disassembling computers and repairing them. Or occasionally programming something incomprehensible there. As long as there was money donated for the wedding, and until Dasha went on maternity leave, they did not experience any special financial difficulties. There were enough funds for everything necessary, but Eddie's wife was not enough. He spent almost every day until night either rehearsing or organizing performances. Increasingly, her husband's classes were held in bars, so he came home with a characteristic smell of alcohol. And Dasha was always waiting for him. She wanted to feed him a delicious dinner and just have a heart-to-heart talk. She had once read that a pregnant woman becomes moody, and tried to restrain herself so as not to seem like one, but even then the first bell rang. Eddick and his rock band went one way, and Dasha went a completely different, parallel way. And according to the simplest laws of geometry, they will never intersect. When the wife first asked her husband to help her just walk with the child, and she would sleep and rest for at least half an hour, he looked at her with sincere surprise. "And how do you think I should become a world-famous musician? If you don't let me realize myself," my husband complained once again, "or you don't want me to be successful. If you want, then help. And don't load me with all sorts of boring nonsense." Dasha realized that even with the birth of her son, her husband would not change. He continued to lead a normal lifestyle, putting his family on the back burner. And he really didn't like it if Dasha pointed it out directly. Realizing that her family life had become completely different from what she had imagined. The young woman decided to talk openly and frankly with her husband. This conversation was supposed to decide the rest of their lives. After all, it's not that he stopped giving her flowers and arranging romantic surprises. And it's not the serenades that he used to sing under her balcony. The thing is that Edward completely ignored the presence of a family. He ignored his son Dimka, who was holding out his hands to his dad, hoping that he would finally pay attention to him. He ignored his wife, who also needed a reliable and strong man, a breadwinner and a family support. But this conversation was not meant to happen. Dasha's parents were involved in a terrible car accident. Her father died before the ambulance arrived, and her mother died in the hospital without regaining consciousness. Dasha felt completely stupefied. The funeral preparations, the funeral ceremony itself, there were a lot of people and there was a lot of trouble. She couldn't even cry and let out the pain that was eating her from the inside out. Her son was in her arms, and he demanded her attention. And Dasha decided that there would still be time for mourning. And now we need to deal with the formalities in order to adequately guide the parents on their last journey. Dasha inherited her parents' apartment. After all, she was the only child in the family. Edward, oddly enough, supported her all this time and sympathized with her loss. He even presented orchids several times. Dasha thought that there had been drastic changes in their family life. And she was very happy about it, naively hoping that her husband had finally changed and would now be a full-fledged parent and caring husband. But how deeply she was mistaken. As it turned out, all the attentions from Eddick were for selfish purposes. A few months later, he began cautiously talking about how it would be nice to sell his parents' apartment and use the money to buy a small minivan or minibus. "Honey, don't worry," her husband assured Dasha. "I will transfer the car to you, but I will use it myself. After all, you need to go to rehearsals and on tour." Dasha just looked at her husband with a surprised, hopeless look. What the hell kind of tours? She suppressed a laugh that was bursting from her chest with difficulty. The only thing her husband was capable of was to speak at a corporate party of some small local company. But sometimes his band was invited to perform at a local club, and they never went further than their small town. But her husband was so convincing and so persuasive that Dasha eventually gave up. "You understand, my love, that we can't perform all over the country, just because of the lack of transport. Well, how are we going to drive with all the equipment and musical instruments? Not by train or by bus. That's not why we worked so hard, rehearsed so that we could waste such a chance to become famous like this." Under pressure from her husband, Dasha agreed to sell her mother's apartment. With the money they earned, they bought a used, but in very good condition, foreign car. And then everything became as it was before the funeral. Edward again forgot about the existence of the family. He was just driving around, disappearing at rehearsals, and Dasha was with her son all the time, who was teething. The baby cried so pitifully, slept little, refused to eat. These sleepless nights simply exhausted the young woman. Besides, as it turned out, there was not enough money for almost anything. Now the three of them lived on the money that the state gave out as help for children. Dasha was in complete despair. She didn't know what to do to get out of this situation. There was simply no one to help. There are no parents, no relatives either. There are some distant ones, but they have never been interested in her life. And who needs her with a child? Everyone has their own life. And then a friend helped out. Vera called just when, exhausted by another sleepless night, Daria was crying bitterly, finally rocking her son to sleep. "Hello, Dasha. Why do you sound so sad? Are you all right?" "Oh, Verenchik, don't even ask." Unable to control her emotions, Dasha burst into tears again. "So, girlfriend, you go to the train station right now and get tickets. To myself and the child. My husband, my children and I are going to fly abroad to have a little rest. After all, we haven't flown anywhere since the wedding day and now there is an opportunity. My husband was given a long-awaited vacation. And you will help me out a lot if you stay with Dimka and me. You'll look after the house and our dog. Don't be afraid. I'm with Paniel Ricci. He is humble and affectionate. Thank you, friend. I just realized how much I need a rest. From this apartment, from the routine, from Edik, that I can't stand it anymore." Dasha sobbed again. "Well, stop crying. Run to the train station while you have tickets. And pack a minimum of things. We have a lot of kids left. There's food in the fridge, and there are all kinds of baby purees there. So come immediately, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about all this. And at the same time we'll decide what to do next. Maybe you won't have to go back anywhere. You'll stay here. We will help you with housing and work. You just need to come." After talking with her friend, Daria quickly packed her things, stuffed some clothes into a bag. She wrote her husband a note that she had gone to a friend, but he did not need to know exactly where, and added at the end that she was filing for divorce. Next, Daria checked whether she had taken all the documents, and also found her driver's license. She took her son and went to the very minivan that her husband had parked in the yard just in the morning. Edik himself was on another part-time job. She can't go by bus, especially with a small child in winter. But Dasha did not take into account at all that it is difficult to attach a car seat on her own. And there was a severe frost outside, which was only getting stronger. Finally securing the seat with her son, she got behind the wheel, started the car and exhaled with relief. On the way out of town, I stopped at a gas station, counted the cash and filled up a full tank of gasoline. While I was outside for a few minutes, I was completely frozen. I didn't think to put on a hat and gloves. It's good that Dimka is not cold in the car, because the stove is working. Dasha started the car. She finally needed her driving skills. She drove about 10 kilometers from the gas station. Suddenly, the engine purred and the car stopped. And it wasn't the gasoline at all, because she filled up a full tank. Something else caused the stop. And Dasha couldn't figure out what exactly. And so, as luck would have it, the car stalled relatively far from the nearest settlement. Dasha started calling the emergency service, but there was no connection either. As luck would have it that I had to get out of the car and ask for help from passing drivers. But the highway was completely empty, and the few cars that passed didn't even stop. Dasha was in complete despair again. It's been 3 long hours now, and no one has been stopped. It also started snowing, and visibility on the road has seriously deteriorated. Evening came, it got dark, and darkness enveloped everything around like a heavy blanket. Dasha was filled with anxiety. If Dimka wakes up now, she won't even be able to feed him or give him water, because in a hurry she forgot everything she needed at home. Dasha felt tears coming to her eyes. Despair and fear for her son seized her mind, not giving her a second's peace. At that moment, it seemed to her that there was no way out, and the world was narrowing to an endless black void. But then suddenly, like a miracle, the faint lights of headlights emerged from the pitch darkness, breaking its hopelessness. Dasha saw the light reflected in the dust of the road. Her heart began to beat faster and a lump rolled up in her throat. She didn't care who was in that car, as long as they were rescued. Without hesitating for a second, she literally ran out into the middle of the road and began desperately waving her arms, trying to attract the driver's attention. It seemed to Dasha that each of her strokes was a cry for help that reached the heavens themselves. Suddenly, a powerful SUV stopped right in front of her, and its light illuminated the frightened woman's face and the road ahead. A young man got out of the car. His handsome silhouette was clearly outlined against the background of the headlights. He approached Dasha with a worried expression on his face, and at that moment she felt that salvation was very close. The man looked at her carefully and, catching her concern, asked quietly, "Girl, what happened to you? Why are you standing in the middle of the road and waving your arms? What if I was driving at full speed? Do you even think what you're doing?" Dasha's teeth were chattering from the cold. She couldn't answer clearly. "It's in my car. My child is there. He's completely frozen and wants to eat, but I forgot to take his food with me. My car suddenly stopped. I don't even know why. I have gas, but I can't get it started. Please help me." The man approached Dasha's car and, noticing the problem, immediately called his driver. They got down to business together and quickly found out the cause of the breakdown. It turned out that all it took was a little time and a couple of skillful hands to fix the problem. Just 10 minutes, and the car is back in good condition. With a sigh of relief, Dasha sincerely thanked her savior and was about to continue her journey. However, the stranger, noticing her agitated state, invited her to move into his jeep with her son. He explained that they were going to the same city, and suggested that his driver get behind the wheel of Dasha's car, and he himself would drive his jeep. Dasha thought for a moment, but quickly realized that this offer was really reasonable. Her car is very cold, and Dimka should not catch a cold in such a cold. Gratefully accepting the offer, Dasha moved into the warm interior of the jeep, holding her son on her lap. The warm seats, the soft dashboard light, and the confident manner of the strangers driving immediately calmed her down. She felt that everything would be fine. Dimka, snuggled in his mother's arms, soon fell asleep, and Dasha watched with joy as the night outside the window gradually gave way to dawn. On the way they met, it turned out that her savior's name was Anton. And he was on his way to visit his parents, who had recently moved to this city. Anton said that his father opened a branch of his company here, and in addition to the business, he bought his son a luxury 3-room apartment. Anton said that he often visits his parents, despite his busy schedule. He admitted that he was still not married, as he devoted all his energy and free time to work. And the women he met along the way often turned out to be just hunters for other people's money. As soon as they found out that he was provided for, their attitude changed, and they began to look for benefits for themselves, trying to bargain as much material goods as possible for their loved ones. This greatly disappointed Anton, and he was in no hurry to connect his life with any of them. Anton's parents have long dreamed of seeing their son settled in life and married. They want to babysit their grandchildren, enjoy the family idyll, and be sure that their son is happy and surrounded by love and care. Anton understands their feelings well, but has not yet met the only one he could call his destiny. Listening to his story, Dasha involuntarily blurted out, "Don't rush to get married." Anton looked at his companion carefully. "Why do you say that? Are you really burned with your family life?" And Dasha suddenly felt, for some reason, not at all ashamed to admit to a stranger that, yes, she had burned herself. And now she's running away to another city from her husband. But it all started out of great love and romance, but now that love is no longer there. And there have been no traces of romance for a long time either. It turns out that being an independent woman, a good wife and a caring mother is very difficult without male help. Without his care and attention, without, after all, a permanent salary. Anton, I'm sorry, of course, for my harsh words. But that's how it turned out in my life. That's such a bitter family experience. I really hope that not everyone is like me. They rode in silence for a while. Then Anton suddenly said, "Dasha, listen, maybe you can help me." The man suddenly asked, and his voice sounded serious and a little embarrassed. Dasha smiled sarcastically, feeling that this conversation would be unusual. "What is it? Is the debt payment red? Tell me already. I'll think about how to pay the bills." She replied, not hiding her irony. Anton was not offended. He realized that Daria was just defending herself in this way. "Don't put a finger in your mouth," he just grinned. "But I will still voice my request, or, as you said, my duty. Please play the role of my bride in front of my parents. I'll introduce them to you, and they'll calm down for a while. Just one meeting. Please." Dasha, thinking about it, realized that the situation was not easy. But she couldn't help but help the man who helped her out with Dimka so much. "So you want me to play the role of your bride?" she asked, still puzzled. "Yes, that's right," Anton confirmed. "Just for one day. Mom and Dad are constantly pushing me to find a life partner. They already have a girl in mind that they consider ideal. But I do not agree with this, and I hope that your help will calm them down at least for a while." "Okay, I'll help you, but only for one day," the young woman said decisively. "Tomorrow my friend and her family are going on vacation, and I will have no one to leave Dimka with. In addition, the option of a bride with a child who is not yours will not be the best for your parents." Anton breathed out a sigh of relief, realizing that his request had been heard. "Thank you. However, only for one day. This is very important to me." They continued the conversation, and Anton seemed to feel that he could trust Dasha. "You know," he began the conversation again, "I had a girlfriend, but I didn't introduce her to my parents. Mom somehow found out about her and said that I was making the wrong choice. According to her, the only thing that mattered to the girl was his money and position, that I didn't believe it until I was convinced of it myself. She left me. A rich businessman has barely appeared on the horizon. The parents hinted that they had another girl in mind, whose decency they did not doubt. She's pretty and works at Dad's firm. But I refused such a matchmaking, and that was the end of the matter, and now Mom uses forbidden techniques. Everyone is crying that there will be no grandchildren, so I ask you to play along with me. Okay, but only for one day, tomorrow, Dasha replied in a confident voice. The next day, Anton came to pick up Dasha. Vera, her friend, helped her prepare for the meeting, convincing her that she needed to look 100 points. When Anton saw Dasha, he was impressed by her metamorphosis. "You look absolutely amazing," he said, not hiding his admiration. "My parents will be thrilled." Dasha smiled, feeling a little nervous. "I will be silent like a fish," she joked. But Anton replied seriously, "No, you don't have to. Just be yourself. Your parents need to see you as you are in real life." When they arrived, Anton's parents greeted Daria like an old acquaintance. It turned out that she had worked for Anton's father's company a long time ago, and it was her parents who wanted to introduce him earlier. Anton was surprised and pleased at the same time. After the meeting, Daria returned home, where Vera was waiting for her. She questioned her friend in detail about everything that had happened and drew conclusions. "You like Anton, don't you? And so are you to him," Vera said. "Don't hide from your feelings. It's decided, you're staying with us. Get a divorce immediately. And go work for your former boss. I'm sure everything will work out. He will accept you. You're a great and professional designer. And until Dimka goes to kindergarten, he will be with our nanny. And you won't hide from Anton. No. If you don't like him at all, then I'm completely out of it. But, to be honest, I have big doubts about this. In short, so far everything is like this," Vera smiled dreamily and summarized. "Oh, I wish I could go to your wedding." For a moment, she thought about the fact that Dasha had already had one wedding, and abruptly changed the subject. "But I have to go to bed now. We have a plane tomorrow morning. But I'll be in touch all the time. And for my friend to give me a full report every day." Vera said this jokingly, wagging her index finger. In the end, almost everything turned out that way, as Vera painted it. Then, Anton began to come to Dasha every weekend, and for a long time he did not dare to say the main words to her. As he admitted later, he was just afraid that Dasha would refuse him. But when she confessed her feelings, the guy felt a huge relief. He put her and Dimka in the car, who was already stomping confidently and always running towards them, and took them back to his parents. But Dasha was very afraid of this meeting with her parents, because she was no longer going to them alone, but with her son, and she was not sure how they would be received there, with such and such luggage, and into someone else's yard. However, her fears were dispelled when Anton's mother sat down in front of Dimka and said with a smile, "Well, hello, granddaughter, I'm your grandmother." Immediately, the father added, "And I'm your grandfather, let me shake your hand, boy." Dasha couldn't believe her ears and eyes. This only happens in the movies, she thought. But it wasn't a movie, it was her new life. And in this life there was not and could not be Edward. A year later, she saw her ex-husband in a story on TV. He was on stage, not as a musician, but as a man who disrupted a concert by a famous rock band. Eddie staggered shamefully onto the stage and tried to snatch the microphone from the soloist. "But I couldn't. The guards ran up, then the police. But at least that's how Edward lit up on the big stage. Dasha looked at all this and thought that her ex-husband had chosen such a life for himself. And this is everyone's right. She now has her own scene called Life in Love and Complete Harmony. Dear viewers, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss new interesting stories.